Hi guys, today's video is a voiceover. The visuals will be very low key as I'm trying to avoid a copyright strike. As you might have gathered by now, I am a fan of the IDOLiSH7 franchise, so you can imagine my surprise and joy when I watched IDOLiSH7 Third Beat and suddenly subtitles popped up in something akin to Danish. In episode 12 of Third Beat, preparing to take over, Nagi speaks Northmarian with Thorvaldur, who is also from Northmaria. In the episode, this is achieved by having the voice actor speak in Japanese and then have subtitles in Northmarian. As it turns out, Northmarian is basically Danish. Since Danish is only spoken by about 6 million people worldwide, I thought it would be fun to compare these subtitles to modern Danish and to the official Crunchyroll English subtitles. Unfortunately, Third Beat does not have official Danish subtitles, so I've translated everything myself. First, a couple of disclaimers. I am a native speaker of Danish. I was born and raised in Denmark, but even within such a small country, speech patterns vary. Danish in general is spoken very casually, and especially in the region where I'm from. I should also note that the region I'm from is known for speaking with zero pitch. The language is as flat as can be, so please keep that in mind when you're listening to the Danish. Northmarian isn't Danish, obviously. Even within IDOLiSH7, Nagi says that he speaks Danish, which means they are different languages. Therefore, any differences are not to be taken as mistakes on the translator's part, but could be due to organic differences between the two languages. But since Northmarian is not actually a real language, I will be treating it as if it were Danish. The Crunchyroll subtitles are translated using the original Japanese. When they differ from the Northmarian, it is not because they are translated wrongly, but because the Northmarian subtitles do not always line up with the spoken Japanese. Also, I am still learning Japanese, but in my understanding, it seems that Nagi and Thorvaldur are speaking to each other politely and that the level of politeness doesn't change significantly during the interaction. With that being said, let's jump right into it. This is the first sentence Nagi says in Northmarian. At the top, you see the Northmarian subtitle. Below it, I have translated the Northmarian by Danish into English. Beneath that, you have the English subtitle from Crunchyroll. At the bottom, I have written the Northmarian the way I would say it in Danish, so you can compare this to the Northmarian at the top. The first sentence is, Thorvaldur, jeg bor da ikke alene her. Du kan ikke bare komme ind og forstyrre mig sådan. Which, when translated directly into English, becomes, Thorvaldur, I don't live here by myself. You can't just come in and disturb me like this. The subtitle says, Thorvaldur, I'm not the only one who lives here. You'd be causing trouble by suddenly coming in uninvited. As you can see, they are very similar, although the subtitle is a bit more formal than the Northmarian. If I were to rewrite the original sentence into my modern Danish, it becomes, Thorvaldur, jeg bor her ikke alene. Du kan ikke bare komme ind og forstyrre mig på den måde. The Northmarian here is fully understandable, but the sentence structure is more like Swedish than Danish. That's also why there are only minor differences between the Northmarian and the Danish. Then Thorvaldur speaks, jeg kan ikke gå tilbage, før jeg er sikker på, at det er sikkert her i huset. Which, directly translated into English, is, I cannot go back until I'm sure this house is safe. In the subtitles, however, it's, I cannot leave until I've confirmed the security of your residence. Here you see a big difference in the level of formality between the Northmarian and the English subtitle. Danish is a casual language, and the first sentence doesn't sound that weird in Danish. However, were I to say it, I would say, jeg kan ikke tage tilbage, før jeg er sikker på, at huset er sikkert. The next sentence is one where Nagi is aggravated. He says, du skal helst bare overholde reglerne. Du opfører dig jo næsten som en stalker. Which, translated into English, is, I'd rather you just stick to the rules. You're acting almost stalker-like. Whereas the English subtitles say, please go through the appropriate channels. What you're doing now is no different from stalking me. Do you see the difference? The level of politeness changes a lot in this one, but the meaning is overall the same. The Northmarian sentence is technically not wrong in Danish. You would just not phrase it that way. Instead, you'd say, vær sød at overholde reglerne. Du opfører dig jo næsten som en stalker. Thorvaldur replies with, de vil vist alligevel bare have ignoreret mig. Which, directly translated into English, is, you would have ignored me anyway, it seems. However, in Danish, and in Northmarian it seems, there are two different ways to say the singular you. One is more polite than the other. In this example, the polite version is used. The subtitle says, only because you won't comply with my requests. Which, if I'm being honest, is the weirdest sentence out of these four. If I were to say the Northmarian in Danish, I'd say, De ville alligevel bare have ignoreret mig. But you could just as easily use the Northmarian sentence here. In Northmarian, Nagi then says, det, jeg har jo tidligere sagt at, which in English is, that's, I've already said. The subtitle says, that's because, and if I were to say it in Danish, I'd say, det, jeg har jo sagt at, but really it makes no difference, and the Northmarian is completely fine. Forvalter says, som de tillader mig at bruge vold i stedet, which, if you translate it directly, becomes, as you allow me to use violence instead. The subtitle, however, says, very well, I shall have to use force. The Northmarian is missing a word. As you what? It also includes a minor spelling error, but many Danes have trouble with this one as well, and it doesn't affect the meaning. It should also be noted that it sounds perfectly natural to use the word violence in Danish as compared to force, which sounds more natural in English. If I were to say the sentence in Danish, I'd say, som de vil, tillad mig at bruge vold i stedet. This next one is long, but interesting. In Northmarian, Nagi says, Forvalter, at du smider mit billede ned fra sengen, er så respektløst altså. Which means, Forvalter, for you to throw my photo off the bed, it's like so disrespectful. Which, for those of you who've seen the episode, might be a bit confusing. Because the English sub says, Forvalter, how could you drop photos of me on the floor? It's disrespectful, don't you think? Do you see what changed? In the Northmarian, they used the Danish word for bed, whereas in the anime, the photos fall off a table. Of course, this could just be a difference between Northmarian and actual Danish. But seeing as this is the only word so far that has changed the meaning altogether, I can't help but think it's a mistake. However, this is not the only issue. Photo changes from singular to plural, which is the correct form if you look at the actual scene in the anime. Another thing I need to point out is the use of the Danish word altså. With this, we've moved from casual speech to sounding rude. There is no other word for it. In this sentence, Nagi sounds like a bratty teenager. If I were to change the Northmarian into actual Danish, in this case it would be closer to Forvalter, at du smider mine billeder ned fra bordet, det er så respektløst. Even though it still sounds a bit awkward. With that, I'll end part 1 of the video. Please stay tuned for part 2, which will be out in a week.